I'm Andrea Warnock.
I'm Nathan Warnock.
Welcome to Thirsty Thursday on Marriage by Design. Thirsty Thursday is a show where we get into the scripture and just read a passage of scripture and talk about background, context, and then application. So it's a pretty quick thing, and it's hopefully to encourage you to get into the word yourself and ask the Lord how it applies to you.
Yeah, for sure.
So right now we're in Matthew 19. The first few weeks we were in Matthew 19, 1 through 8, and now we're in verse 9, and we're just covering verse 9 today. So I'm going to read that and then have Nathan give you some context. So it says, Matthew 19, verse 9, "And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for immorality and marries another woman commits adultery."
So, this is the one, right? I mean, this is the one, the big one.
Yep.
Right? We know, as from a Christian standpoint, we don't get divorced except, right? There's always the except, and then people point right here to this verse. So, the background on this verse is, Jesus is addressing the Pharisees. Jesus tries to take them back to the beginning once and saying, well, from the beginning, this is what marriage was. I've loved the way Andrea said it the last couple of weeks. He was asked about divorce, but he chose to focus on marriage. Mm-hmm. And from the beginning, what marriage was. And then the Pharisees respond with, well, that might have been what marriage was, but Moses changed it. What do you say about that? And he takes them again back to the beginning. And then he makes this statement, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. I think it's insightful for our conversation to know a little bit more about that word sexual immorality, because I think it's fairly widely assumed that what that means is adultery. Mm-hmm. Right? If my wife commits adultery, then I'm free and clear. Right?
Get rid of that one.
Right. That word sexual immorality is a Greek word porneia, which is the word where we get pornography from. And that word encompasses way more than just adultery, although it certainly would include adultery. Mm-hmm. It also would include all number of lustful thoughts, certainly being involved with prostitution or any of those sorts of what we would say are fornication, right? Some sexual activity that is outside of God's will. But Jesus takes that even further, because as Jesus makes clear in the Gospels, if I've even thought lustful sexual thoughts about a woman, it's the same as adultery.
Yep.
So when we look at this sexual immorality and we try and make it this like, okay, well, if you do this one thing, then I can just do whatever I want, and you forfeited our marriage, and I'll be the one now that'll decide how long I want to be with you. Mm. And when we actually look at this, I think here's the thing that we have to come to terms with. If we take this term literally, I'm not sure there's any of us that live up to that standard.
Right.
Because forget actually having an affair. Have you ever lusted after another woman or another guy in your heart? Have you ever fantasized about another guy or girl? Have you ever looked at pornography? Have you ever gone to a strip club? Have you ever done any of these things that are a perversion of God's desire for sex? That's all going right under this term, porneia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's great. So you see here that in verses 7 and 8, he was talking about Moses, and that Moses allowed for certificates of divorce to be written. And then in verse 9, interestingly, he never says, he never really answers the Pharisees' question. And what he says is really talking about divorce and then remarriage. And that whoever divorces his wife except for immorality and marries another woman commits adultery. Well, that's not the question that they asked. But what he's dealing with is their heart. So their heart was really, hey, can I get rid of the one I've got for this other, for
the
this
one I want.
for this one I want.
Yeah.
And so he's recognizing their heart attitude is really to try to figure out, okay, can we get Jesus to sign off on what we want, and also paint him into a corner. And what he's saying is, really, it's only because of your hardness of heart that you would divorce your wife if there's an immorality issue, because it goes back to verse 8 where he's like, yeah, Moses permitted that, but only because your heart was hardened, because you don't believe that the Lord can change your marriage, or you're not willing to allow God the time to change your marriage and allow God to work in your marriage. It's only because of you and your hardness of heart that you're wanting a divorce in the first place, because I never intended you for any reason at all to get divorced. So then he's saying, well, if you do it and you marry another woman, that's adultery.
Right.
And you're the one now committing that sin of adultery that you divorced somebody for.
Right.
So the application there for me is first of all, am I in my life, am I looking for ways that I can toe the line? So there's been a lot of times in my life where I'm doing the Christian thing, but that's not my heart, really. My heart is to toe the line and see how far I can get. And I don't want that to be my heart. I want my heart to be, I want to stay within the boundaries that the Lord has set out, because I know that that's what's right. And that's his care for his love for me is in those boundaries, because that's where I'm protected. That's where I'm safe. So that's, for me, that's a big takeaway with this. And then another huge takeaway is God's intention was never for divorce, and
ever, for any reason.
For any reason at all, even in case of adultery or in the case of any kind of immorality. That was never his intention. And so how do I live my life committed to a man under every circumstance?
Yeah. Yeah, now I think we do need to take a moment and address a couple of different groups of people that might be watching this video. First, and I want to be absolutely clear with this. If you find yourself in a situation where you're afraid for your safety or the safety of your children, meaning you're with a man or a woman that's physically abusive to either you or your children, man, I want to be super clear. Please get help. Get yourself and your children away from a dangerous situation and get help. Right? This is not, saying it was not God's design for divorce is not the same as saying there aren't situations where you must look out for your safety and the safety of the children that count on you to protect them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're in a dangerous situation, you must get help. That's first. Second, you might be someone who maybe you're looking at this and you're going, well, but I already did get divorced, and I didn't know that at the time, and now here I am, and you know what? Maybe you got divorced due to sexual immorality on your ex-spouse's part, or maybe you didn't, right? Maybe you just got divorced because, right? And I would just tell you, prayerfully consider what God would ask you to do in this season to honor him. We have several friends at our church, people that we've met, some of whom were divorced as long as 7 years before the Lord ultimately brought them back together. They're now happily married and have just recently had a second child together to complement the child that they had when they were first married 8 years ago. An incredible story of God's restoration and desire for marriage. So it could be that you need to maybe set aside a dating relationship that you have right now to go back and pursue restoration with your husband. Now, if you've remarried,
Or wife.
or wife, thank you. If you have remarried in the meantime, then that's a different thing, right? You need to be pouring into the marriage that you are in now. The Bible's clear about that. That if you have remarried, you can go back and look at Deuteronomy 24 that we've been talking about earlier, then you need to be fully committed to that marriage. We don't divorce to undo a different divorce, right? But I want to be clear on this, that Jesus here is clearly saying, well, I understand that you're wanting out of this marriage where someone has victimized you in the way of adultery. I understand you want out of that, but I feel like Jesus is saying to you right now, do you believe that I'm big enough to step in and impact your marriage? Right? You can pull the escape hatch, right? Jesus says it right here in his own words, but it's not his best.
Sure.
Right? And we want his best for you. And I want you to prayerfully consider, do you want his best for you? And that may mean that you turn that over to him, right? And allow him to soften your heart towards your spouse and allow him to start drawing those bonds of marriage back together. No situation's ever hopeless. So allow him, borrow hope from us and our situation, the pain we've been through. Nothing is ever hopeless. And the Lord desires to bring your marriage back together and use it to glorify him as well.
Yep.
Anything else, babe?
Nope.
Awesome, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, if you have any thoughts, comments on today's reading, love to have you let us know. Reach out to us in the comments or by email or on our Facebook or Instagram page. Love to interact with you guys. Otherwise, have a great Thursday. Tomorrow, Family Friday. Special guests, so please join us for that. And then we'll write in the diary on Saturday. Be back at it next week.
Yep.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.